Hello, and thank you for listening in to Conscious Woman Being, the podcast conversations. Today, it is a delight. It's an honor, really, to be in conversation again with my dear friend, the wondrous Michael Stone.
Uh,
And today, Michael and I, it's the conversation really, it's a deepening and a continuum from our last conversation, which was all around the intelligence of this frequency or energy of trauma. And
mhm.
today we are going to be in conversation around fear. So, welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Deepika. So good to be with you again.
Michael, fear. Where to begin? I mean,
Mhm,
fear is fear. Fear
mhm,
is fear. But in context of, well, there's a couple of things that are really obvious to me, and I'm really curious to listen to your wisdom around,
mhm,
and that's uh, fear and change,
mhm, mhm.
because
Yeah.
change is a constant. Generates, enlivens so much fear. And even around healing, even around wishing to heal something that
Mhm,
needs healing, there is still that involves change, and that
mhm,
can be rife with fear. And then, of course, fear in relationship to trauma and healing, being with the energy, this intelligence, if you will, of trauma.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Well, we could talk 2 hours about what you just said.
Yeah.
First of all, let's take a kind of move the lens back a little bit and look at the origins of fear. Um, First of all, because fear has been around since we had language and we had thought. Um, it's been passed down from generation to generation. So there's, uh, it's natural. Our ancestors had to be afraid because they would be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger if they didn't have some fear. Because fear is a beautiful emotion. There are no bad emotions. First of all, they're all teachers, and um, and fear is really the teacher of heightened awareness of presence. When we experience fear, something is saying, "This needs your attention." Okay, and that's been going on in within our ancestors. So again, to go back to trauma, my perspective on trauma, particularly in the work that I do with people and groups and organizations, um, is to look at the ancestral as well as the collective and individual trauma or familial trauma, and how they're one system. There's no separation from that. So the reason I start with our ancestors is because fear has been passed down through generation to generation to generation. Um, and it is a heightened experience, an embodied and heightened experience. So you have fear of the mind and you have fear of the body. And they're really, when we look at the difference between them, fear of the body, we would say, is an emotion. It arises spontaneously in relation to something that's happening, whereas fear of the mind is um, more of a construct, and often the things that we're afraid of um, are passed down beliefs, hereditary. My great grandfather was afraid of snakes, so my grandfather and my father were afraid of snakes. I'm afraid of snakes, so it's epigenetic in that sense. There's also hereditary fear. So we come into life with fear. It's not something to get rid of, though. Just like trauma, uh, fear is a teacher. It's not, I go, oh, I don't want to be afraid. But from a traumatic perspective, fear has already been suppressed, and now we're saying we want to get rid of it. So remember, uh, when we're talking about trauma, we talked about trauma is not the thing that happened. It's the thing that happens in us when there's a traumatic experience. It's an evolutionary uh, protection that the nervous system has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to protect us. So, um, when we're looking at this and we have fear, we can think about fear, and we, we simply make ourselves more scared by thinking about fear. Like in the United States right now, there is the collective, there's so much fear in the collective. And so many people are stressed and shut down and carrying this fear, which is often the fear of what I don't know, you know. Um, and that's a really interesting thing because it takes us out of presence and puts us in a uh, manifested future, like hope. Hope is actually a postponement of now. It takes me out of the moment. So we say, oh, I hope this is, or I think it's going to get better. But it keeps us from actually being able to integrate because we're not feeling, we're projecting something out in the future that isn't even here. So that fear and that fear of fear is something that is a cognitive experience. It's what I would call a feeling, which is mental, not an emotion that arises like saber-toothed tiger in the bushes.
Mm.
That's a different aspect.
So they have
So
different sensations, Michael.
different, yes,
But
different.
the energy of them, if you will, is the qualities of them can be felt, can be sensed differently.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. So feelings are cognitive, they're of the mind. And being of the mind, it's a construct. Whereas emotions are somatic, they're of the body. So, happiness, for instance, we think it's an emotion, but it's really a feeling because it's dependent on what happened. I'm happy because I got the house or the car, or I got married, or I got divorced, or whatever. It's dependent on that. They do work together, but emotions are an upwelling. So instead of thinking of happiness, if I have joy, that's an upwelling in my body. I feel this. It's like, oh, a tree, or an experience that just is uplifting. So distinguishing between feelings and emotions helps us to better learn how to regulate.
Mm.
So, there's a lot of pieces in here that I want to kind of weave in as
Yeah,
we're.
because they're very interrelated too. Like
Oh
listening
yeah,
to you, I
yeah,
can completely see how one weaves in and influences the other.
exactly. They
How
do. They
feeling
Yeah,
gives charge, I suppose,
yeah,
to an emotion, and how an emotion influences the energy of the feeling. Like they're,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
But we're looking at how to meet and integrate fears. So I'm trying to kind of lay a groundwork here a little bit because my lens is trauma that I'm looking at fear through, and that perspective is you have to first recognize that trauma is not something bad that we need to get rid of or fix. It's actually a message that is saying, "Hey, something's going on here to turn towards, not away from." But what we do in a fearful situation, we turn away from it. Okay, and so in the mystical traditions, of course, anytime any big emotion or something comes up, you turn towards it.
Mm.
So, 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 so just to go over it again. So from a trauma lens, whatever was suppressed in an overwhelming experience, I have an overwhelming experience, and my nervous system, in order to keep going on, my nervous system fragments a part of my essence, and it shows up in the body as tensing or numbing. Okay.
There's a
And so that
split.
it's
There's
it's what?
there's a split.
Yes, there's a split off.
Fragmentation.
Exactly.
Part of us, when we experience the trauma, we split.
Yeah. And that protects us. So I can keep on going on in spite of the fact that I have this fearful big experience coming over me and it washes over me. But my nervous system then fragments and it turns into, and it's not tension or numbness. It's actually tensing and numbing because it's a verb. It's like your refrigerator is plugged in, and as long as it's plugged in, it keeps your food cold. Well, when we have a trauma event, it's plugged into our nervous system and it's constantly tensing and numbing. So you can see it takes a lot of chi dollars to keep it running. A lot of my natural energy and my substance is being used up, which is why there are a lot of illnesses that result from unintegrated trauma. So integrated trauma means that I have been able to feel and experience the experience that I suppressed, because trauma is unfinished past. So when I look at trauma, it's unfinished. So much of our fear is unfinished past, from ancestors, from collective, from family, things that I've carried now with me from, what happened in my formative years. Um, and this is a really important part too, because if in my developmental stages, the first years of my life, I didn't felt seen, heard, held, or protected from a caring witness who looked in my eyes with love, then I never got the co regulation I need to learn how to self regulate. So, this is really important because in order to manage overwhelming fear, I need to learn how to self regulate. But if I
Yeah.
didn't get that from a parent, and this is a really important part, dealing with fear, if 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 I'm overwhelmed by fear, one of the most important places to go is in relationship to someone else, where I can connect with another person, because then I can have co-regulation and begin to learn to better self-regulate that fear. This is why I do trauma circles. This is the whole
Yes.
point of it, you
Yes.
know.
And
Uh,
so what you're speaking to is in the self, in learning to self-regulate, then we can not only have functional relationship with ourselves, but we can
yeah,
start to have functional relationship with others, conscious relationships, fully
yeah.
fulfilling, actually fulfilling relationships, because they're not governed by this unconscious feeling
Hmm. Hmm.
that is running the
Right,
operating system.
right. So when you're looking from a trauma lens, integrated fear means that I brought awareness to it. I didn't try to push it away. I didn't try to get rid of it or shove it down. I actually was able to feel that, and in the feeling, it turns into presence. So there's not a doing in this. It's a presencing, also a verb, a presencing, bringing myself into presence with the fear, because
And
fear is,
that's important.
yeah,
Sorry, Michael,
very
to
important.
interrupt, but you've just said something so important, because presence is where it's at.
Mhm.
Presence is the presence is that which we most seek. It's all there in that presence. And you said earlier, it's not about I can't recall your exact words, but essentially it's not making the fear go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's recognizing and sort of embracing all parts of us.
Well, when you
Seeing
take
what's
it that
there,
way, fear
seeing
becomes a
where all the
portal.
energy is going. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a door, a doorway, a portal
Yeah.
when I can hold it that way. Because fear is the foundation of our false self, our ego self.
Oh, I like that. Fear
Yeah.
is the foundation of our false self. And what are we seeking? What do we want with ourselves and other people? We want to be authentic, right?
Well, we want to connect.
Mm,
And we would like to, there's a longing to be seen, but also there's in the false self, there's this fear of being seen. So they're in contradiction, right? I want to be seen, but I'm scared to death. If somebody sees me, they'll see the shadow parts that I don't want anyone to see, and I don't want to talk about, and I don't even want to look at. So that's the false self, the stories and the structures that say this is who I am. That's when I say uh, uh, I'm this person, I'm a father, I'm a businessman, I'm this, I'm that. We say these things, or we say that about our spouse, this is my partner, this is my children, but we're looking from a lens of the past, a non-emergent look. So anytime I say, oh, this is my mother, I can only know my mother from the past. It's non-emergent. So it keeps the whole thing stuck. There's no emergence, there's no potential, there's no capacity um, for creativity, innovation,
mm,
and creating future,
That
manifesting
sounds
future,
this
because you're stuck
identification.
in. This
Mm,
is this is what I talk about when I say, we're not nouns, we're verbs. We're not a person, place, or thing because that comes out of the past. We're a verb. We're always, human beings are movement. Movement is energy, and
mm,
energy needs space in order to manifest anything. So that's the first cultivation, really, of presencing is creating inner space. How do I create inner space? I'm able to be with whatever's arising or able to be whatever is blocking whatever's arising. And that
mm,
allows it then to automatically integrate. Because again, integrated um, trauma is presence. Unintegrated trauma, though, is destiny because the body always wants to heal. It's designed to heal. So if I have a relationship where we have the same argument over and over and over again, that's the repetition compulsion that Freud talked about. That is the nervous system trying to heal itself.
yeah.
That's why I say
Working with what it's got.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at relationships, it's like we marry our unfinished business, you know.
I think I may have.
I think most of us have to some degree, but that's not a bad thing.
No.
That's an opportunity actually to grow. That's what allows
Right.
us to grow. If
Yeah.
one can stay present while the other gets triggered, and then we have this incredible opportunity to grow. And
Yeah.
that in that, yeah, and it's interesting because, when you look at growing and belonging, if we have a relationship and one person decides they're going to go on a spiritual journey or something, and they're growing, and the other person is happy watching television and drinking beer, um, there's going to be a problem because there's going to be a break in belonging. If my growth outgrows the other person, I'm going to have fear around, I'm going to lose that. So
Mm,
belonging is another huge part of this fear thing too. And part of that, when I say I belong,
mm.
what am I actually doing? When I say I belong to this group or that group, or I belong to this whatever.
Well, it's interesting because belonging is something I've been exploring that's been very alive just in recent weeks, or yeah, the last 6 weeks or so. I've been with this whole concept of longing
Hmm.
of being with longing
Hmm.
and what it is we actually yearn and long for.
Yeah.
And so belonging, there's something about, there's almost like this commonality of recognizing
Yeah,
what
that's
we
true.
most seek in ourselves and having a somatic experience of it in the company of others.
This is true, but there's a major pitfall in
Mhm.
our sense of belonging. When I say I belong to this group, I am absencing those who don't belong to that group. I
Oh,
create I create an absencing of those who are not part of this place where I belong. And we don't think about that. So, but it's natural, oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Jew, I'm a social worker, whatever. I have this sense I belong here, but I don't belong out there. Because the first pitfall from trauma is a false sense of self, a sense of separation. I'm separate from you. You're over here and I'm over here. Okay. And that is one way that we know each other. Oh, yeah. Deepika's over there. I'm over here. We're on different continents. But in a way more real way, you show up in my nervous system and I
mm,
show up in your nervous system. And
mm,
my capacity to know you only can go as far as my capacity to know myself.
yeah. Or you won't
That's
be able
pretty amazing,
to be.
when you think of it, and it's a way more real. So I can only project on you what I don't know in myself. I then project on you, and often what I'm projecting is that you don't belong in this. You're other than me. I've otherized you. I've distanced myself in a way. And so that creates a lot of fear because then you've got, well, oh, the Republicans are going to kill us all. And the Democrats are filling our heads with nonsense, and they're going to, and then you have exacerbated fear because I cannot connect with those people because I've got a rigid sense of false self, like I was talking about, that is I'm this kind of person and I'm not that kind of person. And this is huge, this how that relates to belonging.
Well, it's
So
completely, yeah, it's totally, and yet it comes, I suppose for me, it comes back to we, all of us, by virtue of being human, of, having this, having taken birth in this body at this, in this lifetime, with this nervous system, we each have a heart.
yeah.
And we all are here to experience something that's already imprinted in
Well,
it.
this is another what you're
There's
saying is
this
another source of
untapped
fear.
potential. But we all have a heart. And within that
Mhm.
heart, we all have longings.
Yeah.
We all have yearnings. We all have desires.
Yeah. All that's true. And here we have the false self again. So the heart, actually, the mind has had a coup over the heart. So when you look at the symptoms of fear, fear is, it masquerades as overthinking, shutdown, emotional flatness, dissociation. That's what fear masquerades when we're in our head. When we're
Mhm.
in our heart, I love the work of heart math. I don't know if you've, spent any time with that, how powerful the heart is. But we've literally suppressed the heart. We need to get the right king back and get out of the head and into the heart. The heart should be the ruler of the mind.
Well, that's the
But
self-regulated that you're speaking about. When you were speaking earlier about learning to self-regulate,
right,
that's really tapping in and starting to live more from this heart intelligence
exactly.
as opposed to the intelligence of the intellect.
Yeah, yeah. And so what, when we're in our head, it 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 obfuscates the reality and the truth, the what's so that we need in order to integrate the fear or be able to deal with the fear. So, the first step is becoming aware of the suffering that we have from the fear. We suffer around it. We suppress it, but there's a suffering, there's an anxiety. And the first step is to notice that. And the second, uh, becoming aware of that leads us to awakening, presencing, um, recognizing that, yes, we have pain, but suffering is actually optional, you know. Uh, and I'm not talking about deep suffering where people are starving and, you know, uh, that. I'm talking about everyday kind of suffering over things like I don't have enough money, or I need to get this or that. And we struggle with it and we suffer with it. And that brings up a lot of fear. So um, the movement towards integration is to notice, come back to the body, notice the pain, what Eckhart Tolle calls the pain body. I think that's a great distinction that he made, was the pain body, because it is the pain body uh, versus the light body, the awareness body, the soul's um, unfolding through the heart. The soul doesn't mature from the mind. It matures from the heart, from a deeper sense of my intra being with all of life, or Thich Nhat Hanh called interbeing. That sense of, that's why in the groups that we do, we work, for 4 to 6 months with these groups, feeling myself, feeling you, feeling me, and the space between us. That sounds like a simple exercise. It's not. I have people that been in 3 or 4 groups and still working on that, and it's always something to work on. So coming back to the body, and I guess the thing to say is, when we don't know, when we know something, we know what we know, and when we don't know, sometimes it creates a lot of fear when we don't know. But the thing is, when we are clear that we don't know, we know that we don't know. And there's a kind of releasing in that, to go, oh, I need to find out what I don't know. And that helps me to deal with the fear, just knowing that not knowing is not a problem. It's, we make it a problem, but not knowing, we know we don't know. And we come back to our closest sphere of awareness, to ourself. We, there's the individual, there's the collective, there's the ancestral, there's all these other, circles of influence. But when I know I don't know, I come back to my heart. This is why I like the runes so much. I'm a big fan of the runes. When I get stuck somewhere, that's my ancestors' particular way of finding something. I'll ask the question to the runes, and it's always amazing the answers that you get when you draw a rune, um, because it somehow taps into your intuition, your instinct, your when you're in your body and you are practicing moving towards the pain, towards the what shows up as tension or numbness in my body. When I bring more and more awareness, most of us aren't even aware of how much tension we carry. And chronic tension is the telltale sign of trauma. If I have a lot of tension in my neck or shoulders, It's not just because of the way I've been sitting, it's because of the way I've been thinking and acting in the face of my own fear. So, um, so everything needs to be grounded in the body. That's the first part of that. Um, and fear, if I'm in the mind, it uh, uh, it blocks authentic inquiry that keeps us, you know, um, clinging to that identified, that ego self, that this is who I am, that thinking that we know who we are. I mean, it's really a good thing to recognize you don't have a clue of who you are. The amount of information that we use to assign a self, there was a great poem. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I think it was Wang Po, Chinese poet. He says, "Why are you unhappy? Why are you unhappy?" He says, "Because 99.9% of everything you do and say is about yourself, and there isn't one."
That's great.
So that's, it's a construct.
It's a
And the
construct.
more that I can be a phenomenologist, being attuned to the phenomenology of what's happening, you
Yeah.
know, I love that's, my background is Gestalt. That's, how now? It's always like looking newly, what's emergent, what wants to move through me.
Mm.
And it really serves me well as a practicing therapist that I'm constantly looking at what's happening in me so that I can feel what's happening in you. That whole looking at myself, feeling you, feeling me thing. So I need to bring authentic curiosity into it, not from what I already know, but you know I think of trauma work as somatic anthropology. I have to dig. Have to keep digging in, and because curiosity can outweigh avoidance. You know, and that begins real somatic and spiritual inquiry when I turn towards something.
Can
That's
you
what brings
elaborate on
maturity.
that for people listening? Because
Pardon?
that, can you elaborate on that? Because that's
Sure.
such a, yeah, that's such a juicy point that curiosity outweighs avoidance.
Hmm. Yeah. So, so spiritual maturity begins really when I begin to turn toward, and that's, bringing a curiosity. What am I feeling in my body? So many people are numb to their body. What emotions are present? People will say, "Oh, I don't know, I feel pretty good." You know, well, that's not an emotion. I personally, with all the trauma that I had, and I'm trauma poster child, wasn't until my 40s that I could begin to actually feel, and 50s that I could really feel, oh, that's what sadness, that's grief. Oh, that I could distinguish, from the different emotions. So curiosity, keeping a sense of not knowing open, you know. There's a school called the Ridwan School. You might have heard of them. They're a school that practices repetition, questions of repetition for hours and hours. Who are you? I'm a man. Who are you? I'm a therapist. Who are you? I'm a father. Who are you? And after a couple hours of that, you start, all the constructs start breaking down, and you start going, I I don't know who I am. I don't have a clue.
Yeah, yeah. I use an exercise of that based on the intuitive methodology work of the
Hmm.
premises. And that's as taught to me, it's simply, is that true?
Hmm.
And it can go on indefinitely until that point.
The same thing, yeah.
I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Hmm. So, awakening brings up primal fear, that fear that I talked about in the very beginning, that, is passed down from our ancestors. And as we start to disidentify from our beliefs, then that primal or psychological fear can begin to arise. And we can tap into the reptilian brain, that biochemical programming. Um, and uh, this is what this is, that reptile brain. So that primal fear isn't a fear of something. It's not a fear of something. It's the body reacting to a loss of identity, which we were talking about, right? So we build up this false identity, um, and it's just a story. And when we start to get curious, we start to deconstruct our story and break it down. And like you said, that's a good one. Is it true? Is this true? Yeah, I don't know. So that stage of dealing with fear is a much higher level of fear. That's like standing at the edge of the cliff going, I'm gonna leap into the unknown. I'm gonna drop into it. And so that's, a huge movement with fear. And then we begin to learn how to go through fear without a story. Who would I be without a story, without a narration, without an interpretation? Um, you know, how do I begin to see the lenses that I've been looking and seeing through? How can I separate the observer from what's being observed? And then a lot more of the fear things start to break down, and and that deepens the sense of not just curiosity but awe and wonder and questioning. And the nervous system can regulate when we stop resisting and trying to get rid of something and push it away and get away from it, because it allows us to reclaim the parts of us that are not created as a hierarchy of self, or it feelings, emotions. It just turns to pure presence, and then you find clarity, you find relief, and that deepening presence, and fear just doesn't have much power over you at that place. So
So it's
it's
certainly the resistance, allowing that resistance to the fear to melt, to soften.
yes, and it's allowing. It's not a doing, it's an allowing it to melt.
No, it's
That's
an
a really
allowing. There's nothing
important
to do.
distinction.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the minute you're doing, you're already bringing in the past. You're already bringing in, you're trying to do something or change something, but it's not about trying to change anything, not about getting rid of, you
Mm.
know. And as we do this, then there's, greater emotional capacity. We disentangle for the ego structures, and then the deeper emotions start to arise: the rage, the guilt, the shame, uh, uh, the grief that we all carry.
So can you
And
speak to that a little more, Michael, the deeper emotions that can begin to
yeah,
be
well,
known?
most of us are carrying so much grief and
Mm.
rage and guilt and shame. We carry it in our body. It's not ours even. It's been passed down through generations and these are the primal emotions, ones that are implicit, not explicit. We can't say, "Oh, I have that because of this." It's implicit. They're just the raw material. And so when we deconstruct the identity, then we move more freely because we're not blocking them anymore. We're not trying to be someone. We're not trying to be a story. We don't have a story. It's that we don't have a story protecting us. So the built-in mechanisms of our evolution start to fall apart and disintegrate, and we become what we already are. Human beings are movement. That's who we are. We're movement. I'm looking at you, movement, and you're looking at me. We're movement looking at movement. Movement is information, it's data. That's the two things I said. We need space, we need present, we need stillness. That's will allow something to emerge. And then we need data, information, movement, energy, which is the movement of what shows up, what occurs, what arises. So we get to a place where there are no problems. There's just elemental forces that are seeking expression and integration. But that's a big statement. I don't. I have moments of that in deep meditation, but there's
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And just
So
because you may have a moment or two of it here doesn't mean that you'll have it again there.
yeah, right.
But
And
but it can feed this curiosity versus avoidance.
mhm,
It can
mhm,
fuel the curiosity
yeah,
to continue being curious about
yeah, absolutely.
allowing these constructed stories of identity. And this happened to me, and that's happened to me, and
Right. Right.
yeah,
And when we reach that place of being really embodied and aware of what's happening in the space in the cup that I am, my cup grows as I do this work.
mm,
And then I move from fear to flow. And so when their emotions are grounded in the body, they move, emotion, their motion, their movement. So when they're not, they overwhelm or they numb us. So we're movement, we're data in motion. And
yeah,
then, you know, because fear ungrounds and contracts in the body. You can feel it. The throat tightens, the jaw stiff, my shoulders go up, the pelvis, locks, my knees lock. I'm tense, like it's
yeah. And I'm
tension.
sure we can all identify with where the barometer of fear is felt instantly and most
Yeah.
strongly in
Hmm.
it, even without
Hmm.
having done much self-inquiry.
Hmm.
Everybody would know if they're, oh yeah, I feel my fear in my shoulders or in my gut or in my right knee or a quivering of the heart or a constriction of the breath or whatever it may be.
And when fear is openly met with a curious heart, it flows into excitement, vitality, an expanded capacity for feeling and being in life. That's the outcome of embodied presence.
Yeah, and Michael, you make such a great point there because so many people are incredibly weary and chasing the source of vitality.
Right.
How do I become more vital? And so I'll take this, I'll do that, I'll try this therapy. It's endless. But you're describing a very simple formula.
It's a simple formula. It's a little difficult to
Reinforce
practice,
your own vital forces to
but
allow motion of life force to be experienced.
absolutely. And when I can feel the sensations, the pain, the stress, the anxiety, the sensations that go along with that without needing to name it or fix it, that's when I move into flow.
Yeah.
I don't have to name it and give it a category. This is stress.
Mm.
People use that word. I think we talked about this before once. It's almost a competition. People say, I'm so stressed. And then you will say to me, oh, I'm even more stressed than you are.
Got
I've
more
got
stress
the
than you. I've
dogs
got
and
this and this and this and this.
exactly, exactly. It's like a
Oh, I've
competition.
got the biggest plate of stress you'll ever see, says somebody else.
But we're using a word like stress or love or many of these words, but stress, what does that mean?
Mm.
It means when I really take it apart, it means my current capacity is insufficient to meet the challenges in front of me. So it's an issue of capacity. How do I build capacity? I build capacity through meditation, through contemplation, through through prayer, through slowing down, softening, slowing down, grounding myself.
Mm.
That's the path right there. And then fear just becomes energy and not identity.
Mm. And that's an interesting point too, Michael, because the whole, do I have the capacity to even be well? Can I
Mhm.
experience wellness? Can I experience what it is to be in this congruent relationship of health or
Yeah.
well-being? Just, not the absence of illness or injury, but can I be well? And capacity, when that capacity belief comes into play, it's been my observation and experience that there can be a pattern of a great pattern of bypassing through positivity.
Oh yeah. Major. Yeah.
Actually,
Major.
nothing's penetrating. Nothing's
And
penetrating through. The membranes are barely even being stretched. There's that a languaging and an identification and activity that is focusing on something that's not alive.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, like I said, we get to this place as we do more and more somatic um, work and more presencing work that the reaction between the stimulus and the response gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So I have an overwhelming fear and I bring curiosity and awareness to it. I ground myself, I soften, I slow down, I don't try to run from it, I meet it, and then fear just shows up as energy. We stop identifying with it like it's no longer mine. It's in me, it's a part of me, but it's not mine. It's just sensation moving through space.
Mm.
And that's, what the curiosity brings. So what's there then is awareness, not
Yeah.
a self that fears. It's not a
Mm.
self that fears, right? It's
Mm.
just pure awareness.
Awareness of sensations.
Yeah.
So, what's the panacea for people to allow, be willing to
Hmm.
allow the
Yeah.
sensations to be felt?
Yeah. Well, I think that we're talking about immersion here because my ability to immerse myself into the sensations and feelings and presencing myself dissolves the resistance to fear or whatever else, stress or whatever else. So when we can be fully present with our fear or our emotion, the part that wants to escape disappears. It's like, oh, fear, oh, tea. It's not, it leads to a more direct, unfiltered experience. There's no story, there's no resistance, there's no separation. It's just, like I said, it's flow and becomes flow. And
Information
that
flow.
information flow, yeah, data. That's right. That's the part. And so that's a good point. So the meditation, which can often be a bypass, by the way, and can re-traumatize people if it's not
Mm.
properly attuned. But
Mm.
um, but on the other side of letting go of the story of who I am and how fear impacts me is clarity. There's this deep presence which allows for intense emotions to deconstruct automatically into greater stillness and spaciousness, which is space, greater space. So it's kind of like, the peace after the storm. Think think of a crying baby. Oh, look at that. You know, baby's a great metaphor for that, you know.
Suddenly everything's angelic again.
Moves through them, and then it's all of a sudden, oh, look at that shadow, you know. It's like,
As it is
yeah.
with an intense emotion. When an intense emotion is really being experienced, it can be loud, it can be hectic, it can be full on, and then it's over
Yeah.
and it's quiet, quiet, spacious,
Mhm.
silent.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's the willingness to do the shadow work. You know, Jung said, where the fear is, there's your work.
Yeah.
And he's speaking of the shadow, those things that we're afraid to expose.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you know, and also I think it's important to recognize integration is not linear. Um, and an example of that in meditation, for instance, like, you know, I've taught meditation for years and I'm a big meditator. And one of the things that happens when people start meditating is they create more space. Well, when they create more space, it brings all the shit and the sewage up,
It
you
fills up
know?
with their shit.
So,
Yeah.
so we think, oh, I can't do that meditation, or oh, I had a really bad. There's no such thing as a bad meditation.
There's
You want
information.
that stuff to come up. So it's really
Information.
important when I talk about, you know, I think it's important to tell people, look, when you start to meditate, if you're really meditating and you're really open to feeling it all, then the shit's gonna come up. And
Well, our
that's
bodies are
as
literally
it
full of
should
shit.
be.
Our
Pardon
bodies
me?
are literally full of shit and phlegm and substance that has
Yeah.
to be let go of. Like it occupies the space.
No.
And yet there can be such aversion to experiencing the sensations of the energetic shit that
Yeah.
we can be.
Yeah. Which can be very emotionally and even physically painful. But
Yeah,
you have to
literally.
trust the unfolding and stay in relationship with what arises and not turn away from it, not distance ourselves, not absence ourselves, but actually allow ourselves to trust the unfolding.
So
And
not numbing out with
exactly.
distractions.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Michael,
distraction.
we could talk about this on and on.
We could.
But for people listening now, because there's been a lot, and I suggest that when listening to this, you may wish to pause or re-listen again and again and just chew it slowly. Allow
Let me
it.
give some steps. Can I give some steps,
Yeah, and
Deepika?
so I was going to say, can we close with what can you give
Yeah.
people that
Yeah.
they really grab hold of to feel I got this. I can do
Yeah.
this.
So I'll make it very linear, and it isn't linear at all, but I'll make it linear just for practice. So the first point is presencing, acknowledging the presence of fear. Don't push it away. That's the very first thing. You presence what's so that you're experiencing. And and then we move into a stage of witnessing, you know, where do I feel it in my body? I breathe with a sensation. I begin to let it move with me. So I'm zooming in my awareness, right? And then the next step is really embracing. I welcome. I say, you are welcome here. Thank you for protecting me. Because that's what fear is about, is protecting. I welcome, I embrace that. And I if I can stay with that, then I begin to notice what's beneath the fear is often grief or care or love. You know, so I look at the emotion that's underneath the fear because there's, you know, uh, the fear is like um, a river, and there's all these other aspects that are in the river, in the flow of things. And so I bring my awareness to it. And and then I recognize, so that's the steps. And then I begin to recognize that it's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a deepening connection and insight. It's a deepening, a loving, a respecting, an honoring, a bowing down to the brilliance of the divine messages that come through our soul and move through us. And that's how we mature and grow our soul, literally growing our soul. So, um, my
Mm.
friend John O'Donohue, who I was so close to for so many years, he said, "May your fears yield their deepest tranquilities. May your
Oh,
fears yield their deepest tranquilities." Isn't that
yeah.
beautiful?
And even as you were, it is very beautiful. Thank you, John O'Donoghue. And even as you were speaking then, Michael, I could feel the softening, and there was a kindness and a tenderness,
Mhm.
and I had a visual of from this growing a greater capacity for compassion
Mm,
self that can
beautiful.
then spill over for
Mm,
others. So thank you. And yeah, that's a real
yeah.
gift you've offered here.
Hmm. Yeah.
It begins with presencing. Mm.
So, can I tell people about my website
You
and how to
can.
get a hold of
Please
me if you
do.
want to?
Please
So,
do. Please do. And if people have not read or know yet or listened to the first conversation that we've had on the trauma of intelligence or the intelligence of trauma, then Traumatized, a love story, Michael's book is widely available at all major online and I'm sure
yeah.
many mortars booksellers. And
And I think I mentioned before that the comments I get often, very often, are, "I thought I was reading a book about you, and I ended up the book, and I realized I was reading a book about myself." And I've had so many, did you say
yeah,
that too? So many people have said that, and I love it.
yeah, yeah,
Oh, it's
yeah.
on
We
Amazon.
all
It's
have
on.
more in common than we could possibly imagine.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and the website is Well of Light, WELLOFLIGH.com,
Mm,
welloflight.com. And if you want to reach out and find out more about programs and things, it's Michael at
yes.
welloflight.com.
And you offer regular programs online and in person group.
Yeah, well, I've been kind of, while I wrote the book, and now I'm doing the Audible and the ebook. Has taken
Oh,
4 years basically, so I haven't been doing a lot of online. But I've talked to the Shift Network wants me to do 2 courses next year,
wonderful.
and I'm doing another one for people interested in how this work applies in organization, with the Pocket Project. I'll be doing that, a year-long program in the importance of dealing with trauma in organizations and the impact in terms of productivity and connection and that kind of thing. So yeah, a
Wonderful.
lot
So
going on, and I'm
out.
doing live circles, but I haven't yet. I probably will, uh, December or January, start another circle. And those are amazing. We have a group of people together that are really practicing the feeling myself, feeling you, feeling me, and a lot of teachings in that. And those are usually 4 to 6 months long because we go really deep with it. So anybody who wants to go really, and of course I do individual counseling
Yeah.
also. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
wherever people are at, you're able to meet them.
absolutely. Yeah,
Something. So I
the
really,
beauty of the internet age.
I know. Well, it allows us to connect, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, it's good. So thank you, Deepa. I just really
Thank you, Michael. Thank you
appreciate.
so much
Yeah.
wisdom imparted. So it's wow. Wow, there's so much. So again, everybody, thank you for listening and choose slowly and re-listen again and again.
That's great. Choose slowly. I love that. It's important. That's a good practice.
Yeah, great
Much
love.
love. Yeah.